property financial connection, it's a very strong cultural connection. And that cultural connection isn't just the communities, the very strong communities we have in Melbourne and Sydney. It's also the connection through our sense of property, bricks and mortar, you know, safest houses, those types of scenarios. And yet we want to differentiate between those cultural and trade and economic connections and say, no, we don't want your investment dollars, we don't want your development dollars. We're going to charge you higher than we charge our locals to be active in terms of supplying our undersupplied housing markets. You know, it's just playing to the mob, in my opinion, and you know, it just creates even more undersupply, higher rents and higher prices, and you know, it's a concern. I mean, either we have the capacity for international investment in this country, or we don't. You know, that's it. Let's not start mixing and matching and creating more problems than we solve, and saying, well, we'll take with one hand and then give with another. You know what I'm saying?
Do you think there's another side to those?
Can I just, Lucy,
not at a local government level. We're not trying to do any of these.
We've got to get out of their life, don't you?
without turning this into a debate, I mean, the points that Andrew makes are well made. But within the individual banks themselves, though, forgetting federal policy, the banks themselves are taking a much more conservative approach to borrowing now, making it harder for young people to enter the market at this time. But again, as I said earlier, those taps are not going to be turned off forever. There will be a short-term tightening, as I understand it, and then it'll be game on again.
Yeah. And I wonder also, is there another side to these new foreign investment taxes for Queensland? I mean, when you see New South Wales and Victoria, those taxes versus the taxes that are being implemented in Queensland, it makes us it's a pretty good story to tell here. Don't agree, Andrew?
Well, yes. I mean, I'm just, you know, it's confounding, as I said, that
no taxes are good taxes.
Well, look, the banks are part of the policy too. I mean, weren't we going to have a settlement crisis this year, as well as an undersupply crisis and a bubble crisis and every other crisis you can think of that comes and goes, but prices and rents keep rising. So, you know, it's again a one-size-fits-all policy, and I think restrictions on investment on a domestic versus international basis just, to me, smack of xenophobia at the end of the day. And I think we've grown out of that, haven't we? But if it ends up, you know, having higher rents and prices, it's a negative impact, and on our economy as well. You know, we're certainly not out of the woods in terms of the performance of our economy now. You know, and you know, as I said, I think that, you know, restrictions in terms of the supply of finance are also part of that issue, that we're looking at risks that don't really that don't exist at the moment, and then creating those same type of risks that end up with you know, mismatches between supply and demand.
Understand. I think the Lord Mayor and Councillor Caldwell have certainly made it clear that Brisbane and the Gold Coast are open for business, and that foreign investment is welcome here.
And one of the things that we've tried to do as well is to actually create incentives. So while Andrew talked about taxes, we've created 3 streams of investment opportunity that weren't there in the marketplace. The first was around hotels, where I removed all infrastructure charges. So then, as I said earlier, it was 17 4- and 5-star hotels in the last 4 years I've opened. And then the next area was around student accommodation to accommodate our 75,000 international students. So we've had a flood now of new beds come into the market specifically designed for students and international students in particular. And then the third one, and this is the newest now, is aged care and retirement living. Some incentives, and again, things that weren't happening. We're now seeing about 19 applications that have been approved in the last 8 months alone in that space, purely through small incentives.
Excellent. I think the city's doing some of the same things here. Cameron, is that?
Yeah, I mean, look, in 2012 we rolled out a very successful construction kickstart initiative, which really is what pushed things off, I guess, here on the Gold Coast. And on the back of that success, we've seen continued growth in the number of development applications that have been approved. We're at our record levels in 16 years, I think, which is very good news. And we continue to look at ways that we can encourage and facilitate good development in the right locations on the Gold Coast, and certainly in terms of things like the education sector. You know, we're currently looking at that space because that's an important sector of our economy, and it's a growing one.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So that brings an end to our panel discussion. I'd like to thank our panellists very much for their time today. And for the final part of today's proceedings, I'd like to invite Na Yu to the stage. Many of you know Na, who's the Queensland Director of First Media, the largest Chinese real estate media company in Australia and organiser of this weekend's APE Property Summit. Na will be introducing today's final speaker and concluding the formalities. Thank you very much.